Welcome to the GMS Magazine podcast, Human Beings of Planet Earth and Beyond. This is a podcast all about board games, role-playing games, and the people who make them. Sometimes also the people who play them. I am no other than Paco Garcia, one of your co-hosts.
And this is Chris Diaz, the other co-host.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, today we're going to be a little bit, perhaps even shorter than usual, because we don't have a lot to talk about, surprisingly enough. We haven't taken a look at any news because I just haven't had the stamina to look at anything. But I do have a list of some gimmicks in some gimmicky games that have absolutely no bearing whatsoever in the game.
On a side point, like I was saying, we're going to talk about, like we were talking about, gimmicky games. Ones we like, ones that we don't like. I have a list of kind of. I have my list of my favorite mechanics, and then examples of games with it, and then these two games that did not really work because of their gimmicky mechanics. I was talking to a friend of mine. We were talking about a bunch of ones. There's a bunch that I'm sure we'll talk about. On a side point, have you checked the new Google VO AI?
No.
It is. I think it's that worst case scenario where they can get anybody to say anything and you wouldn't know it was real or fake. It's kind of crazy how far we've evolved or how far it's evolved in just 3 years. So, like I say, thank God I'm into cracker making right now.
Well, I mean, this is something that we could all see coming. I'm just looking I'm just looking at the website now, not looking at the AI, and this was meant to happen. It was bound to, not meant to, but it was bound to happen. And as I've said many times, this is just beginning. So that's it. Okay. So before
talking about
sorry.
Talking about gimmicky board games. Do you have a list? I have a top 5 list of the games I love.
I do, but first, before we talk into we go into that, I would like to tell everybody that on the 1st of June, partly to commemorate Pride Month, but also because I think it's an absolutely wonderful month to go on to Kickstarter. I am going to release a project on Kickstarter. Me. By myself.
Yes. You yourself.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yes.
What is this project that I've never heard of?
Well, I am glad you asked. That is an absolutely beautiful question. Believe it or not, I have actually written a role-playing game. It's a solo journaling RPG, and it's called Closet. And guess what the theme is all about?
It is about carpentry.
Yes.
It's about building closets. It's about like the wood, getting the right wood, shelving. It's not about.
I could have called it The Secret Life of IKEA, but no. It's actually that would be a really, really good idea for a game. So don't steal it from me, you listener, viewer.
Copyrighted. You can't take it. It's mine.
Absolutely. No. It's actually a journaling, a solo TTRPG based on my experience of coming out of the closet. Because believe it or not, I did come out of the closet a very, very long time ago. And listener, if you didn't know I'm gay, where have you been for the last, I don't know how many years?
Has anyone seen your shirts?
I don't know where this shirt came from. Please don't hate me. It's really old and it makes me look lankier than I am because it's too big and it's horrible. But it's what I was wearing today to take Tycho out to the doggy park. So yeah, I've done this game and it's going to go on Kickstarter on the 1st of June and it's going to be running throughout the month of June. But the best bit is not just that if you play this game, if you go along with the prompts and the cards and the dice, you will be able to get an idea as to how easy or difficult it is for a gay man to come out. But also, every penny raised through the campaign is going to be given away to charity.
Wow.
It's a wonderful, wonderful charity that I love very much called the It Gets Better Project. And the Spanish section of the charity does amazing work, and they always struggle to get sponsors. So I thought that it would be a good way to help globally an organization and locally a very, very good bunch of people who, you know, when I was talking to Tomas Loyola, who is the president of It Gets Better here in Spain, he said, "Oh, you know, we went to LA once, you know, for one of these symposiums that we do for the organization, and they said to me, oh yeah, you know, it was great. We got a $500,000 donation, and he said, $500,000 would set me and would set the organization in Spain for 10 years.
Wow.
You know, we are lucky if we get €1,000. We are lucky if we get somebody who will pay the electricity bill and sponsor us this way. They don't get an awful lot of support." And I thought, you know, yeah, it's a global thing, but if I give them the money, then we don't have to be going through any kind of international transfers that will eat away from currency exchange plus bank fees plus whatever it is. So the whole thing is just going to go to them. But furthermore, the rights to print and distribute the book in physical is going to go to the It Gets Better project worldwide.
Oh, wow.
So if they want to translate it into different languages, they will be able to do so. If they want to print it and give it away, they will be able to do so. If they want to print it and sell it, that will be entirely up to them. But all the physical rights, the digitals, I will keep, so I can keep giving money away to other charities through the book. But the physical copies of the book will be all given. All those rights will be given to the It Gets Better project worldwide.
Wow. So is this a digital RPG?
Well, it's going to be a PDF, but during the campaign, people who back it will also get a print-on-demand code from Drive-Thru.
Wicked.
And that's it. So only people who back this project will be able to buy the physical book afterward, unless they buy it through the It Gets Better project when and if they decide to publish it and to print it. So yeah, if you want a physical copy, get onto the Kickstarter. It's only going to be there are going to be 2 pledge levels, one for €12 and another one for €16. They both come with exactly the same thing. The only difference is that you want to give a little bit more money. So that's it. If you want to be a little bit more generous, then you can be a little bit more generous. But otherwise, yeah.
I did that many years ago when I released Amethyst Evolution. I put out 2 SKUs. One that was on sale and one where it wasn't. And I told people that they could choose which one they wanted to go for. And I was surprised. About 50% paid the full price, which was surprising. I was surprised by that. I regret it because as a result of having 2 different SKUs, my sales numbers wouldn't combine. So whichever one sold better, I eventually deleted the other one and kept the other one going. But I never got the credit for that numerical advancement of those sales. So as a result, I never really got my an accurate pledge badge. As people ask me the same thing about Amethyst, Ultra Modern, is like, you know, oh, you're a mithril badge. You know, technically it'd be adamantine, because when you add up the Ultra Modern and Redo, the sales are significantly higher between the 2 of them. But yeah, no, that's actually a wonderful idea.
I hope it works. I'm only asking for €100, you know, to fund, because the idea is to raise money for charity. So there is not going to be any stretch goals. There are not going to be any fancy gimmicks. There's going to be absolutely nothing. This is just to raise money for charity and to try and bring awareness of what kind of thing people go through when they come out of the closet. And as I say in the book, is a book that should never be played for. It's a game that should never be played for fun. It's not going to be a fun experience. But I promise you that whatever it is that comes through your imagination when you're playing the game will be something that somebody in the world has gone through at some point in their lives, if they have come out.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they haven't, but they wanted to. Because coming out is not an easy process, ever.
No, of course not. Of course not. That's fascinating. I wonder if that one game company that was dealing with board games designed for neurodivergence, I wonder if she's still running things. I haven't talked with her since we talked with her last when she was running that storefront. Because she seemed like the type of person that would definitely support that sort of thing. I know that once you go live, I'll blast it out to my fan base, and I'll throw it on my mailing list.
That would
So
be
we'll
great.
I'll get I don't know, I think 6,000 faces to hear about it.
That would be unbelievable.
Yep.
Okay.
Least I could do.
So okay. So now that we've talked about this game, let's talk about gimmicks. Let's do one thing before we jump into any list of games or any list of gimmicky stuff. Let us define what is a gimmick in a board game. What's your definition of a gimmick in a board game?
My definition of a gimmick of a board game is something that, regardless of its mechanical importance, is very much non-typical for a board game. It's a weird mechanic that is bespoke and weird, and it is integral, but it's just not something you really see. And my idea is that if you see a lot more of it and it becomes commonplace, then it stops being as gimmicky. And I don't mean necessarily a novel or new mechanic, but specifically a mechanic that someone goes, "Oh, that's weird." Like the fact that there are so many games that use reflex, where you have to throw things. That has been now so common. I don't know if it's really a gimmick anymore. Same thing with roll and write. At some point, roll and write was a weird gimmick for a game, but now it's created a genre that's so massive, it's not really a gimmick anymore. So my list here are games where it's whether it contributes mechanically or not, it's something you just don't see very often.
Okay, in my case, though, gimmick was something that's completely unnecessary. So I've gone more for things like tokens and components that do nothing, but they just get in the way of either production or gameplay.
Yeah,
so
and mine, I think for majority of mine, they probably could easily be replaced with something a bit more, I would say, mundane, but for whatever reason, they decided not to. And it's the case of some of these, you look and go, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. I mean, we only get down to gameplay mechanics that are unnecessary. When you really get down to it, any mini-based game doesn't need to have those minis. You have so many $400,000, $500,000 Kickstarters of what is effectively a $50 game with me. I think of the Hellboy board game, which is a very basic $45 game, but it's $140 because of the 100 minis that are included. 100 minis that you're never going to paint because there's so many of them are just identical, right? And I've always believed that if your game's going to have minis, make them unique enough so you're not repetitionally painting the same minis. That's why I kind of like the minis in Nemesis. There's enough variety in them so you're not feeling you're painting the same model over and over, compared to the Hellboy game where you're painting the same model 10 or 15 times. But so sometimes I look at that as saying like as I call them miniature forward games, where you're buying the game for the minis, not for the gameplay, and the chance that you ever playing the game is pretty slim, which is too bad because I think the Hellboy board game is actually pretty good.
For me, minis become a gimmick when they don't fit on the board. For example, remember this zombie This is a fairly old game. It came in a very small box with a shit ton of very, very cheap minis. And it was one of these escape games where you had tiles that you go placing and you have to run away from the zombies. And you have so many of them that it's almost impossible to put them all on the board, on the tiles. So it was a bit like, yeah, don't do that. It's completely pointless. But I have divided. So
no. Hold that for 1 second. I'll be right back.
I'm holding it.
If we're going to talk about gimmicks,
yes,
and minis, I have to bring up who makes a mini like that.
Is that from Death May Die? From
good question. No, this is not Death May Die. This is from Planet Apocalypse, Sandy Petersen.
Okay.
Who actually is in the news?
Oh my God! Yes. I forgot about that. Absolutely.
I just realized. I was just like, oh my God, we have a skew. Yes, because Sandy Petersen is going to be at a very, very going to be at a convention that is being run by less than reputable people.
Well, yes, and I don't understand. Okay. You know that humans out there, you know that I am very, very vocal against a number of people because they are toxic like a plutonium smoothie. You know, they're just like, seriously, they taint everything they do, even if they are not bad writers or bad designers. And one of them, I really don't even want to say his name because I just don't want to give him any publicity. You know, you can look it out there. But the point is that this guy organizes a super tiny convention for 100 people, and everybody who wants to go to that convention has to pay $100, which is like WTF. You know, big what the fuck. But there you go. That's how he feeds his ego. This is somebody who a few months ago said, oh, that's enough. I am living the world of role-playing games because all this woke thing means that I am not selling enough. Oh no, woke is killing the hobby and killing me. And then came back. Which is like, Lud, I thought you were going to stay down. Why don't you just go, I don't know, find another hobby, try knitting or something that will hopefully relax you. You know, ceramics is wonderful thing. Beer making, anything to keep you away. But no, he had to come back. And who has decided to directly associate himself with this shithole of a convention than Sandy Petersen, which
who
is
apparently like, as after this announcement came out, there were some revelations where it seemed somewhat clear that where his political leanings kind of lie, which is a little disappointing.
Well, we knew that he was right-leaning, and I am disappointed a little bit, but not surprised, to be honest with you, because at one point I was asked if I wanted to interview Sandy when he was going to release some game or another, like a year and a bit ago. It was a while ago, and I said yes, but if you want to come, I need to ask questions about all these controversies. Not because I want to dig in the wound or I am going to ask anything to make him look bad, but I would like him to clarify a few things that he said in the past. And I was told, oh, no, because Sandy, you know, he wants to move on from those things. He doesn't want to be stirring the shit anymore. He's just not where he's at the moment. So I also went around and asked, some of my Facebook friends what they thought and if I should have Sandy around. And one particular fellow that I respect immensely said, Paco, I have worked with him and he is not a very progressive person, but he is not the piece of shit that some people have made him look like. And right now I wonder how that person feels, because one doesn't apply to be a guest in a convention that specifically said it's an anti-woke convention free of politics in games where you can do whatever you want to do.
And the irony, of course, was someone said this is anti-woke, no politics. So like your first statement contradicts your statement. The moment you say it's anti-woke, it's automatically going to be political. You are making a political statement.
Correct. So I think what they mean, people usually when they say apolitical, what they mean is apartisan, that they don't align with any party in particular. That doesn't mean that you're not being political.
Yeah.
Especially if you say, I am anti-woke. That would be like me saying, I am woke, but I am not being political, or that I am pro-LGBTQI+, but I am not being political. That would be bullshit. Complete and utter bullshit. But then, being this convention organized by the person who is organizing it, bullshit is kind of its middle name.
Yeah. So going back to our previous topic,
gimmicks.
This is a very large mini. It has no purpose being this big. It's not overly detailed, so it's not so the only additional detail that you wouldn't see if the model was this big is its mouth. That being said, the reason why I backplayed Apocalypse like 7 years ago by this point was because the graphic, the guy who designed this monster was a guy named Keith Thompson, who's a friend of mine. He's a fantastic. He's going to he's going to probably be in the same breath as H.R. Giger and Basinski when it comes to the quality of his artwork.
Wow, that we've bold claim.
We've talked about working together. We've never been able to coordinate our schedule, so I'm hoping there's a point in the future. But that's one example. Like I don't mind minis, but when they're this big, it's kind of crazy at that point.
You and I coincide in that one. I have I've divided my list in two different types of game: Ameritrashers, I don't know if they still call like that, and Euros. So one of my games is Cthulhu Death May Die. Because that 18 centimeters tall Cthulhu, I cannot call it miniature. I mean, it's a miniature because it's a miniature. But if you compare with the size of the real Cthulhu, then yeah, it's a miniature. But we're not going to do that. But it's a thing that doesn't move. It looks epic. It looks absolutely amazing, and it's beautiful. And don't get me wrong, I would love to have one, but game-wise, it does sweet effect. Absolutely zero impact on the game itself other than looks. That's a gimmick.
Yeah. So I've got 5 gimmicky games listed in kind of the order in which I like the games, and then I'll talk about two games where their mechanics didn't work.
Okay.
One mechanic I see I don't see that often, but I've seen it in 2 games, is marbles. I think marbles is a very interesting idea, employing marbles. Potion Explosion and Gizmos are both 2 games that employ marbles.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that it's not bad if it's a situation where you have a marble fountain. Now, Gizmos does this. Half of the box is occupied by this assembly that you pour all the marbles into, and then they come down this little shaft, and you can see the marble colors coming in, and the color of the marble can change what you're doing on your turn. And so hopefully you may be able to plan your strategy based on marble. Potion Explosion does the same thing. You're grabbing marbles and so forth. But ultimately, it's a very interesting mechanic that doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily need to use the marbles. You could have just gone with cubes. Marbles adds a bit more to the price, but it's a very interesting mechanic. I think it's a neat mechanic. I'm surprised more games don't play with marbles, but yeah, I can only think of 2 games that marbles are employed: Potion Explosion and Gizmos. Both games I own.
And I have to say, I absolutely adore Potion Explosion. I think it's an absolutely brilliant game, and the app is fantastic. I was so hooked at that app for so long that I had to uninstall it so I would stop playing and do anything else with my phone other than playing Potion Explosion, because I really, really loved it.
I gotta see if it's still available.
The app.
Yeah.
Well, I bet it is. Should be. I mean, if it isn't, that would be a travesty of justice. Okay, next game. Next game from you, and then I will go with through my list.
For me, 4 are mechanical boards. These are boards where, or some aspect of the board where there's a physical construct, where there's something mechanical that is moving or shifting around. A good example of this is a game called Noria. It's got a triple stacked circular wheel that you rotate the different wheels, and sometimes with the align, you can get different benefits. But the most obvious one of this one is Zolkin, the Mayan calendar, which actually has, I think, 3 or 4 plastic gears that interconnect on the board, and as you rotate one, they all rotate one step in their segment. Don't need any of that. You could have just used dials or what have you, but they put this additional effort of making the entire game a interconnected mechanical system that when you turn one, everything else turns, and you cannot shift one gear without them all shifting. I really love Zolkin. Noria isn't as good, but Zolkin is extremely popular, became very famous, and they made a couple of variations of that game. But that's one that I've never seen. I've never seen that ever played out in a game. Is a game where there's not even a power, but a mechanical device integrated into the game's construction.
Okay, that's a fair point. I think I've played Zolkin once, and I have to say I did enjoy the game a lot.
Yeah.
It was good, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, but there's once again, it's a cool mechanic you're paying. Of course, as a result of it, the board is not a regular board. It's basically 3 pieces. One of them you unfold, and then you have to assemble the board like a puzzle because you have to get all of these interconnected gears to fit, and then you place stuff on the board. It's a very, very fun game, and I do like the idea that the longer your meeples are on the board, the more stuff you get. So you basically have to keep your meeples on a board as they advance further and further. And yeah, I can see mechanically why they would do that, because it prevents you from having to worry about having to advance every gear separately. You just have to move one and they all move accordingly. But it's a very interesting mechanic.
Okay. Next one.
The next one for me is something we're seeing a lot of. It's still, I think, it's still very controversial, and that is app integration.
Okay.
That's different than another one I'm going to talk about here, but app integration, specifically 2 examples of this: Chronicles of Crime and Rising 5, Runes of Asteros. Now, with Runes of Asteros, the app is effectively a dungeon master that randomizes the solution to a puzzle. And so the players all play throughout the game trying to find the solution to this puzzle. And then you can enter in a guess, and it will tell you how far away from the solution you are.
Right.
If you didn't have that, and the game actually gives you mechanics on how to play the game without the app, but to do that, one player has to be the puzzle keeper, which means they're not really playing the game. They're basically just running the puzzle and telling you how far you are from the solution. And so they created the app so that all people can play the game without one person having to separate themselves. It is a variation of an older design that did involve one person having to run the code.
Right.
But with the app integration, that allows everyone to play. Chronicles of Crime, much more integral. The actual box is just a handful of cards. Almost everything is run out of the app. It has had both positive and negative. A lot of people do love the game, and a lot of people really don't like the game.
Okay,
because of
I
these.
haven't played it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there is, once again, you could have swapped out most of it with cards, and some games like Time Stories does that, where it's just you have 60 or 70, maybe 80 cards that you work through rather than an app. So it was a decision that they made.
Fair enough, I guess. Okay, good. Next game.
Next mechanic for me is similar to large minis, but instead they're other assembled stands. And one example is this.
Yes.
This is the SDF-1 from the Robotech attack on the SDF-1.
Mm-hmm.
It is a flat piece of board on the board, but when you transform, you basically put this on the board and it replaces that model, which is neat, except it does nothing mechanically to the game whatsoever. You're basically building this little cardboard thing, and it points in the direction of the enemy you want to fire at, but you could have had another flat piece of paper with the top image on there. Another example of a game that's like this is something like Everdell. Everdell has the tree.
That's in my list.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everdell has a tree that you actually have meeples you put on the tree. And once again, you could have solved this by your board, but instead, they decided to make the board a bit smaller by making it vertical. There is, I'm trying to remember now. There's a game. I'm trying to get the name of it. And I almost picked it up once, and then I decided not to. And I'm trying to find the name of it because it's the only game to my knowledge that has ever done this. I think it's called, is it Gnome Hollow? Or no, it's a similar game that has gnomes in it, but it has a stand that the gameplay is on top of. And we've seen gameplays that are three-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we've heard some very popular games where the board is three-dimensional and there's a plastic topper. This one is made of porcelain.
What?
I kid you not. I saw it for sale once at at an online storefront, and I almost wanted to pick it up because it was ridiculously expensive. It was like $140, but it was on sale for like $50 because they were trying to get rid of it. And I remember looking at going like, this feels like, why in the world would they do this? I can't remember. I'm still trying to find the name of the game, but I could. But anyway, yeah, there is actually a board game within a very, very expensive ceramic top to it.
It's just the weirdest thing I've heard in a very, very long time.
Exactly. So that, yeah. Anyway, that's so. But yeah, the assembled stands where board games are three-dimensional is I feel like a gimmick that I have. That's number 2. And then finally, number 1 is similar to app integration, but it's website integration. This is usually a much more involved process. It involves audio clips, video stuff. The 3 good examples of this is Mansions of Madness, the Lord of the Rings adventure card game, Detective, a modern crime board game, and then recently Forgotten Waters, the pirate game, which is involving a lot of work with the website. With Detective, basically every player assumes some role. One person's doing active website search, another person's reading the cards, and another person is accessing the website intranet, which has all the data for the case you are pursuing. So those are some of the gimmicks that I have talked about that I think work. Those are my favorite ones. Even though I fully admit some of them can probably be removed, they are certainly mechanics I don't have a problem with. I've never had a problem with app integration or website integration. Never had a problem with some kind of 3D gimmick. Although now this thing is permanently assembled. This SDF-1. Same thing with the tree. It's permanently up on my trophy case over there. So that's the only problem with that. About that gimmick is that you either have to have it on display permanently. Also, the submarine, the cooperative submarine game. right? Which has a full 3-dimensional stacked 2-leveled submarine model.
U-boat.
And it has web app integration on top of that. I have never played it. We own it. One of these days, I'll finally get, focus and go, okay, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to get 4 people together. We're going to play this game, but we've never had because it's just so complex and so gimmicky.
It's why we've never played it either. I have a friend who's desperate to have us around playing it, but you need a lot of time, which we usually don't have, and it is a very complicated game.
Yeah. So I got 2 mechanics that I don't like, but I'll let you go. I'll let you go next.
Okay. I have a number of games. Treasures. I have Fireball Island, The Curse of Vulcar, the Volcano Tower.
That volcano one.
I mean, come on. It's a Marvel truth. Yes, it takes an overload of space, and it doesn't do anything. It could be replaced.
Plastic and marbles. It's several gimmicks.
Exactly. So Batman Gotham City, from 2019, it has a number of crates and barrels that they do, they provide trivia cover for the characters, but they do nothing. I mean, it's just pure decor. They could have been replaced by a cardboard token, and that would be the end of it. Everdell, I have it also for the tree that we have already spoken about. Tang Garden, the plastic lantern first player marker. It's like, what's the point of that? It's just a first player marker. Why do you have to overproduce that? It's ridiculous. Dune Imperium, Rise of X, the deluxe version. It comes with metal water tokens. I thought, it's heavier and it's kind of hard to put on the why. There's another game I have called Dragoon, which also came with literally gold-plated metal minis.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like, why did you do? I asked the designer about this, and he said, well, because we're jewelers. My family has a jeweler tradition, so I thought, why not? Let's make them gold. And I said, fuck me, that's like brutal. The Castle of Mad King Ludwig, the collector's edition from 2023. The Swan Marker. Excuse me, really? Was that necessary? I just don't see it. We can look into the Monopoly, the 85th anniversary edition that came with Swarovski crystal studded tokens, which is how to make a tacky game even tackier. It was just dreadful. And I'm going to say something that people are going to hate me. That's fine. I'm used to it. Please do send your hate. Pretty much the whole of X-Wing, the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game. Look, there was no point to the minis. You could have tokens. And the game would have been exactly the same. The minis are absolute, marvelous, wonderfully beautiful looking gimmicks. But let's make no mistake, they are not necessary to play the game at all. And I have some honorable mentions. Glow-in-the-dark dice. Seriously. What? I'm not joking. What's the fucking point? Who is going to turn the lights off to play the games with resplendent dice that will not allow you to look or to see anything else around the table because the lights are off?
Yeah.
Why waste money on that? Don't do it. Soundtracks or CDs, that are included in horror games. Please tell me once that you have played a horror game with a soundtrack that was on throughout the game and you didn't turn off.
I know one.
Which one?
So this actually has 2 gimmicks, but I didn't bring them up because once again, they don't do anything mechanically to the game, which I was kind of reserved to. And that was Subterra. Subterra, which is one of my all-time favorite games, probably in my top 5 cooperative games of all time. which is a game where you go spelunking in a cave network, has black light impressions on the tiles, which means if you have a black light, they glow in the dark. So if you play, so we'll play sometimes in dim lighting, and then the first player marker or whoever's playing, whoever's turn it is, they get the light, and so they get to point the light and illuminate the glow in the dark tiles. And then on top of that, there is a soundtrack, an official soundtrack to that game that you can play. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's about 45 minutes of audio.
Okay. Yeah, still no good. And last but not least, collector coins that serve as first player markers, and somehow they cost like 15 euros on Kickstarter or something like that. They cost an arm and a leg, and they do nothing. Those are the things that people will leave behind if you need to take the game away, to play anywhere else. What is the point? Those are absolute mega gimmicks for me. But my favorite gimmick to hate are glow in the dark dice, because I think they're completely useless. Yeah, I mean, seriously, don't do those. Don't.
So going back now, for me, I wanted to talk about games that are gimmicky. They have gimmicky mechanics that, in my personal reason, either don't work or an idea it's an okay idea in theory, but for a variety of reasons, most likely cost, they could not make it work, or because the game itself is like the idea is better than the game we end up getting.
Right.
And so there was one game called Nyctophobia, and the entire game, everyone wears blackout glasses, or you play the game completely in the dark.
Okay.
Yes. So the whole game, you basically have to play it by feel. But basically, blackout glasses is part of is a mechanic. And it supposedly was a great concept, but the game was badly designed. It's like it doesn't work as a mechanical game. It doesn't have very good reviews. And it's a cooperative game, but as a result, it's most of the reviews have been, it's a cool mechanic for a bad game.
Okay.
So that was one, Nyctophobia. That's very gimmicky. They had the gimmick, the idea of playing a game in the dark. And I thought of a game called The Faceless. And The Faceless is a game that's very much kind of a grim forest type of grim fairy tales, where there are these 4 children that are trying to either escape away from this monster called the Faceless. There are these 4 images, and these 4 little minis that you can rotate in their extremes of this circular board.
Right.
And its gimmick is that it mucks around with magnets. So the main bad guy is basically a compass, and the 4 minis on each north, south, east, west perspective of the board has a regular, normal, everyday magnet that sits on it, and as you rotate them, you basically change the magnetic spectrum of the board,
right?
Therefore, changing the direction of the way the Faceless moves, and not only that, because as he moves, he doesn't go in a straight line generally, because as he moves in one direction, another magnet will pull him slightly, and he'll go in a different direction. So you basically have to know how magnet and magnetic fields operate, because he's going to move 3 on this turn, but he's not going to go 3 because he's going to get closer to this mini that has a magnet. And so as you move, at some point, he's going to change direction because he's going to be closer to this area. So now we have to adjust these magnets so we can force him to go in a direction where we're not around. And we're trying to pick up these icons while we're doing it. It's an interesting idea in theory. The issue is that The magnetic fields are a little unpredictable, but most importantly, the compass is so cheaply made, it sometimes just doesn't want to work because it is such a cheap 2-cent compass. Very often it gets stuck on itself because it'll just basically it'll bob, and once in a while it'll touch the ground, and then next thing you know, it just doesn't want to work. And so it was an incredibly frustrating game because it was very difficult to predict where he was going to go because humans can't detect magnetic fields. So a lot of times you're like, oh, he's got to be near this guy, only for some strange reason for another magnet on the opposite side of the board, for no reason it will start pulling because turns out magnets are created equal. Magnets you can't create. It's very difficult to make 4 identically powered magnets. So as a result, the idea itself just fell apart, and we got rid of the game after 2 plays because we were just getting so unbelievably frustrated
Well,
with this game.
I think nowadays you can have fairly equal neodymium magnets. They're not cheap, comparatively speaking, but you can get neodymium that is well controlled, I think.
Yes. The issue is, once again, they did not put that type of quality into this game. And so that was ultimately, and that's where the reviews came from. The game, they said the game was a great idea in theory, but ultimately became unplayable because of the low quality of the components. Like no normal times when you have a game with poor quality components, you can still play the game. But this is a situation where the game was unplayable because of the low quality of the components. And the third and final game I wanted to bring up, which is a game I liked a lot in theory.
Right.
And it had some really enjoyable moments. But I have to acknowledge that it was a bit of a mess.
Okay.
It's called Mask of Moai. It has every mechanic that we've talked. It is, I can make a joke saying it is the Ford Probe of board games. And the Ford Probe was a car I owned. It was made from 1988 to 1992. And it was notorious for having every single stupid gimmick that car manufacturers thought we would want in the future. It had motorized seatbelts. It had pop up and down headlights. It had a completely digital dashboard, which they're only starting to do today. As you might imagine, it wasn't a particularly good mechanical function in 1988. So it's just full of all of these nifty things. I go, oh, cool, that's neat. Yes, all of that's going to break down because this car was made by Ford in 1988. You know, pop up and down headlights. The motorized seatbelts, they would automatically lock around you. Like, yeah. So that's what Mask of Moai was. So let's go into details. It had a double leveled board, right? It had app integration. Specifically, you have to look through an app. And on top of that, it also had clay. You got a lump of clay.
Okay.
So here was the objective. You on your turn would look through you could use VR because it gave you a mask. A mask, by the way, that was so poorly made that eventually you kind of stop using it and you would just put the thing to your eyes. But that was called Mask of Moai because you would literally put on the mask to your face and your phone was in there. And you could look around and you would then say to people, tell the other players what you're saying. Okay, I'm seeing a red door. To my left, there is a hallway. To the left of that is another hallway. To that left is a blue door. And the players have to then construct this map out of the components that they have. Like, okay, and then I'm going to jump. And you have to physically jump, and then you would sink into the water, and then the water level would have its own thing. You can then move based off of where you're, and eventually you'll turn around and you'll see a little creature. And it'll be a little creature kind of dancing. And it has a very specific formation. You then have to make that creature out of clay. And so you know where that creature is. And the objective is to navigate, is to find all the creatures and then navigate your way, I think, out of the maze. You're trying to find like this core thing, either get out or to find the center. And so people literally say, okay, I see a creature. It's got 3 eye stalks sticking up and it's got 2 feet. And somebody would frantically be trying. Most likely they're just drawing it. And then when the round is over, because it's real time, but after that real time component ends, you can sit there and take all the time you want to build the map and construct this creature out of clay. It is so gimmicky and so weird that it incorporates double levels, app integration, and clay. Of course, once again, why I say I enjoy it, and this is in my category of mechanics that didn't work, because clay dries out. So within only a few months of owning this game, it was literally unplayable because the clay had completely solidified. So I had to go to a local toy store and pick up Play-Doh. And so we were playing with Play-Doh, right? For the next few times we were playing the game. But after a while, and at that point, the little mask had completely fallen apart because it was so badly designed that we just stopped. I stopped trying to use it. We would just do that. And so it was just gimmick on top of gimmick on top of gimmick. And because it's a cheap board game, it just couldn't survive after a very short period of time. The board everything had fallen apart. It was no longer a playable game because after 3 plays, the clay had hardened, the mask had fallen apart, and it's just gimmick on top of gimmick on top of gimmick. And yeah, this was this is a well-known game enough that Tom Bassel reviewed it, and he gave it a positive review because of how weird and interesting it was. But weird is very gimmicky, and this game was probably the king of gimmicky games in my collection.
Well, that was definitely a very funny story to end the podcast with. Because I don't have anything else, basically.
I'm trying to think now about any other gimmicky board game. I mean, I guess once again, we had a slightly different idea of which games, like which ones are either useless or not. Like there's obviously, I can't remember, Treasure Island. There's a Treasure Island game where you draw directly onto the plastic board. And obviously we didn't bring up all the reflex games. There's a game, there's a cooperative sci-fi game where you're flying a ship around, and the objective is you have to roll the dice in the box of the game board, in the box it came in. But if you roll a die, you can alter the result of that die by throwing the other dice to it in an attempt to try to gain a better result. So not only could you roll a dice, oh, I didn't make, you have a bunch of die 10s, and you have to roll like a high over a certain amount. So if one die didn't do it, you would throw the die of another die and hit it and try to get both results, have one of the results to be higher than the value. If that didn't work, you could throw another die. And one of the dice was a die 6 that had no faces on it because it was only used to throw it at other dice. And you talk again, this is a well-known game. I actually played this. I played this a couple of times. But yeah, there's a very interesting, weird mechanic. One of my favorite games, everything's completely flat except for a church you build, and you put a bunch of tiles on top of the church, and every time you do a full round, you remove that tile and there's a new mechanical change. Now you could have just put that on the board, but they made you build the church, and the church is the only thing on the board that sticks out. And it doesn't make any sense why in the world you could have just put the stack anywhere, but they made you build this cardboard little church to put the tiles on top of, even though you didn't need it. But once again, like that, there's a gimmick, right?
Okay, so are we done?
Yeah, that was basically it. By the way, I could go. I mean, I'd go on for a while.
That's what I'm worried about.
Of games that have unbelievably weird gimmicks. We're not talking about like kids games, because obviously we can't.
No, God, no, that's another show. No, absolutely not tonight.
But if anyone has any ideas for game lists you want us to talk about, please mention them
Yeah.
in the comments or send a message to us, and then we will deal with it.
Yes, definitely.
Real time Akona. I didn't even thought of that. Real time. There's another.
Okay, let's think about that one, because those are games that really drive me absolutely mental. So yeah, let's talk about real time games.
My wife refuses to play them.
I barely ever do, because they really make me really very, very nervous. But anyway, that will be for another show, because it's already past 10 p.m. here and I need to go to bed and sleep. So humans, thank you very much indeed for being with us tonight, as always. Please get in touch, podcast@gmsmagazine.com, where we will be delighted to eventually answer your email, or you can get hold of me on Blue Sky, where I am at Paco at GMS Magazine. Just find me, or on Facebook, where I am at GMS Magazine also.
Yeah, this is Chris from DSX Machina. Find me on all social medias channels under DSX Machina or DSX Machina, which people still insist on saying, and also Tavern Snaps.
Until the next time, human being, thank you very much indeed for being there. And we will be talking to you very, very soon. Take care.
Bye.